Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to Celebration, Florida,
Celebration, Florida.
a town, sort of meticulously designed to evoke this kind of
Right.
sense of idyllic community, like
A happiest place on earth kind of vibe.
exactly. But as we'll soon discover, behind this carefully constructed facade
Right.
lies a chilling tale, the story of the Tote family.
What's so unsettling about this case is that juxtaposition, right? You have this
Yeah.
picture-perfect community, and then within one of these seemingly ordinary homes, a family meets this horrific end.
Yeah, it's like something ripped from a true crime documentary.
Right.
We've got Anthony and Megan Tote, their three children, Alec, Tyler, and little Zoe, and even their dog, Breezy, all found dead inside their home.
Yeah.
And the question that immediately grips you is, what series of events could lead to such a devastating outcome?
Right.
And luckily, we've got police reports, interviews, and a particularly revealing 27-page letter written by Anthony Tote himself.
Yeah.
So let's dive in and see if we can make sense of it all, right?
Yeah. The story unfolds in January of 2020 when federal agents arrive at the Totes' residence.
Okay.
And they weren't there for a wellness check.
Right.
They were there to arrest Anthony for insurance fraud. He'd been running the scheme, billing for physical therapy appointments that never happened.
Oh, talk about adding insult to injury. So the feds show up expecting to catch a, white-collar criminal.
Right.
But instead, they stumble onto a crime scene.
Yeah, from the get-go, something felt off. The lead agent noted Anthony's disheveled appearance and how he seemed to be stalling, avoiding any questions about his family. And then there was the smell. The unmistakable, overpowering stench of decomposition.
Ugh, I can't even imagine.
Inside the house, the agents discovered a scene of unimaginable horror.
Oh, gosh.
Megan, Alec, Tyler, and even the family dog Breezy were all dead.
Oh, my gosh.
Tragically, due to the advanced state of decomposition, little 4-year-old Zoe was actually initially overlooked. Oh my gosh, that's just heartbreaking. You said there was a suicide note.
Yes. A rather rambling and disjointed one found at the scene. It spoke of end-of-world prophecies and the family's desire to escape some, impending suffering. It mentioned Megan's chronic pain and the family's shared struggle with depression. There's even a reference to this mysterious figure named Robert, whom they apparently feared.
Okay, so we've got apocalyptic fears, chronic pain, a mysterious Robert. This is already a lot to unpack.
Right.
Yeah.
And the note itself kind of adds to the confusion.
Right.
It's written from these shifting perspectives, sometimes using we, other times implying that Anthony was already dead.
Okay.
There's also this disturbing suggestion that the children were somehow involved in the decision.
That's really unsettling. Does the note provide any clarity about, how they died?
Not explicitly, but the scene itself pointed to something sinister. Then, at the hospital, Anthony offers this shocking confession.
Okay.
He claimed that he and Megan had orchestrated the deaths as a way to achieve salvation and eternal togetherness. Hold on. He's saying he successfully sent his family to the afterlife, but he's still here.
Yeah, it's one of many inconsistencies in his story.
Right.
He went on to describe drugging the children with Benadryl lace pudding,
Okay.
stabbing them in their sleep, and then suffocating Megan after she supposedly attempted to stab herself.
That's horrific.
Yeah.
But you said something about the forensic evidence not adding up.
Right. This is where the case takes an even stranger turn.
Okay.
The autopsy revealed no signs of suffocation on Megan.
Oh, wow.
And the stab wounds on the children were inflicted post-mortem. And get this,
Okay.
they never even compared Megan's fingerprints to any found at the scene.
Wait, what? That seems like a pretty basic step in an investigation like this.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But the inconsistencies don't stop there.
Oh, gosh.
Anthony later recanted his confession entirely, flipping the script and claiming that Megan was the one who killed the children.
Yeah.
And that he only helped her die out of love.
So he goes from, we did it together to escape the apocalypse, to, she did it and I was just helping her.
Exactly. He conveniently forgets key details from his original confession.
Oh, my gosh.
Throws in these random bits like grabbing Starbucks while his family lay dead in the house.
What?
And blames everything on Megan's supposed controlling nature and illness.
It's like he's pulling these details out of thin air, trying to craft a narrative that paints him as the, victim, a pawn in his wife's twisted game. But the evidence and testimonies from those who knew them just don't support that picture.
Exactly. And it leaves us with a mountain of unanswered questions.
Right.
What was the true extent of Megan's illness? And were those supposed visions of the apocalypse real or a figment of her imagination? And perhaps most troubling, what about the children? Were they truly unaware, or were they somehow coerced into participating in this horrific event? These are questions that we'll continue to grapple with as we delve deeper into this unsettling case.
Okay, so we've got a suicide note that's more cryptic than revealing. Conflicting confessions from the alleged perpetrator and a whole lot of unanswered questions. I'm already feeling a bit overwhelmed, to be honest.
I understand. This case is a labyrinth of twists and turns, and Anthony Tote is an unreliable narrator at best. But by carefully examining the evidence and considering all possible angles, perhaps we can start to piece together what really happened inside that celebration home.
All right, I'm ready to go deeper. Where do we go from here?
Well, there's that 27-page letter Anthony wrote to his father from prison. It's in that letter that the mask really starts to slip, revealing glimpses of his true personality and offering some disturbing insights into his psyche.
Okay, I got it here. Let's dive into that letter in part 2 of this deep dive.
That letter, it's a fascinating document. It's not a confession or a straightforward account of what happened.
Right.
It's more of a performance, like this
Okay.
carefully crafted narrative designed to,
Right.
elicit sympathy and shift blame.
So it sounds like we're about to enter Anthony's version of reality.
Precisely. And right off the bat, he proclaims his innocence,
Oh.
not just in the murders, but also in the insurance fraud case.
Uh-huh.
He tries to dismiss his earlier confessions as, quote unquote, interesting,
Sure.
as if he were just toying with the authorities.
That's absurd. He confessed multiple times, offering like graphic details.
Yeah, we're right. But he attempts to explain this away by saying that he was trying to protect Megan.
Okay.
He claims he was going to tell everyone that she killed the kids while he was out and then committed suicide in front of him.
Hold on. So in this version of the story, he's not only innocent, but also a witness to his wife's horrific crimes.
That's the narrative he's trying to sell.
Right.
And to kind of bolster this image of a devoted, even heroic husband,
Mm-hmm.
he dedicates pages to describing Megan's supposed illness in excruciating detail.
Okay.
He paints this picture of a woman practically immobilized by pain, emaciated to the point of losing her, quote-unquote, female features. He claims that he was this,
Right.
doting caretaker tending to her every need.
But we know from neighbors that they saw Megan out and about, attending yoga classes, driving the kids around.
Right.
It just doesn't align with the picture Anthony's painting.
Exactly. His account seems deliberately designed to create this image of a frail, unstable woman capable of violence.
Right.
But the evidence doesn't support that.
Okay, so let's talk about the night that the family died. How does Anthony's story change in the letter?
He completely rewrites the timeline.
Okay.
According to the letter, Megan wakes up miraculously pain-free.
Okay.
They have this wonderful family day together.
Hmm?
And then she asks him to go fetch Zoe's Mickey Mouse necklace from the condo where they used to live.
Okay.
He claims that he falls asleep in the car and wakes up the next morning panicking because he missed their early morning physical therapy session.
Wait, their 4:30 a.m. physical therapy session?
Yes,
The one that was part of his insurance fraud scheme.
that one.
It's as if he can't help but weave those fabrications into his narrative,
Right.
even when it undermines his attempt at portraying innocence.
Yeah.
It's almost pathological. So what happens when he returns home?
He claims he expected a scolding from Megan for missing the appointment,
Okay.
but instead found a half-eaten, quote-unquote, Benadryl pudding pie and an empty bottle of Benadryl.
A Benadryl pudding pie. That sounds, I don't know, made up.
It does, doesn't it? And while they did find Benadryl and snacks at the scene, this whole pie scenario seems highly improbable.
Right.
And remember, he conveniently claims to have forgotten this detail in his previous confessions.
So how does Anthony explain the children's deaths in this new version?
He claims Megan told him she had a vision while meditating,
Mm-hmm.
that the end of the world was imminent and they had to, release their souls to escape the coming horrors.
So there's that apocalyptic theme again.
Right.
But if he's claiming he wasn't involved, how does he know these details?
He says he didn't witness the actual killings,
Okay.
but that Megan confessed everything to him afterward.
Okay.
He describes finding the children's bodies, cleaning their faces, and making them, quote-unquote, comfortable.
Oh my gosh.
It's all very detailed, but also disturbingly emotionless.
It's like he's trying to distance himself from the horror to convince himself that it wasn't that bad,
Right.
that they died peacefully.
Right.
But he conveniently leaves out the part about him stabbing them after they were already dead.
Exactly. And then his account of Megan's death is equally outlandish.
Okay.
He claims she stabbed herself multiple times, drank a bottle of Benadryl, and then begged him to suffocate her because she couldn't die on her own.
But wait, didn't he describe suffocating her in his original confession?
He did?
And didn't the autopsy show no signs of suffocation?
Right. His story keeps changing, contradicting itself, morphing to fit whatever narrative serves him best at the moment.
It's maddening. This letter is full of lies and inconsistencies, but it also seems to reveal something about Anthony's psyche, his need to control the story,
Right.
to paint himself as the victim.
Absolutely. The letter, in many ways, is more revealing than his initial confessions. It provides a glimpse into the mind of a master manipulator, someone who constructs elaborate fictions to justify his actions and deflect blame.
So with this letter, we're not just dealing with conflicting accounts of what happened.
Right.
We're also seeing Anthony's personality, his manipulation tactics laid bare.
Exactly.
What happened next? Did he stick to this news story during his trial?
He did. And shockingly, the judge excluded his initial hospital confession because the police hadn't properly Mirandized him.
Seriously, that's a huge break for the defense.
It was. But thankfully, they still had his other confessions, the forensic evidence and witness testimonies that contradicted his story.
Okay, so it went to trial. Did the jury buy his act?
The trial was a tense affair.
Yeah.
The prosecution meticulously laid out their case, highlighting all the inconsistencies in Anthony's various accounts and emphasizing the physical evidence that contradicted his claims.
Right.
Anthony, on the other hand, was arrogant and condescending on the stand.
Oh, gosh.
He interrupted the prosecutor, made snide remarks, and seemed to relish being the center of attention.
It sounds like the mask finally slipped.
I think so. And in the end, the jury saw through his act.
Okay.
They deliberated for less than a day before returning a guilty verdict on all charges.
Thank goodness. Some sense of justice, at least.
Right.
But it's still so unsettling. He concocted this elaborate web of lies. And for a while, it seemed like he might actually get away with it. What was his sentence?
He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional year for the death of their dog, Breezy.
Wow. So Anthony's behind bars, but we're still left with a lot of unanswered questions, especially about Megan's role.
Yeah.
Will we ever know the full truth about her illness, her beliefs, her level of involvement?
It's unlikely.
Yeah.
We're left with Anthony's ever-shifting narrative, a narrative designed to deflect blame and control the story.
Right.
But by carefully analyzing his words and actions, perhaps we can gain some insight into the dark motivations that led to this horrific tragedy. And maybe, just maybe, by understanding the warning signs, we can prevent something like this from happening again.
This case has been emotionally draining, to be honest.
Yeah, it is.
I need a moment to process all of this. When we return in part 3, let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
Let's talk about the broader implications of this case, the phenomenon of family annihilation,
Okay.
and what we can learn from this tragedy. Okay, taking a deep breath here. The Tote family case, it's one of those stories that just gets under your skin.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to move beyond the specifics of this case
Right.
and look at the bigger picture. What can we learn from this tragedy?
Well, this case, as horrific as it is, provides a stark example of a phenomenon that criminologists call family annihilation.
Okay.
It's a disturbingly common occurrence, often shrouded in secrecy until it's too late.
Family annihilation, it's such a chilling term.
Right.
But I have to admit, I don't really understand it. What drives someone, especially a parent, to harm their own children?
It's rarely a single factor,
Okay.
a lone trigger.
Right.
It's usually a complex interplay of forces.
Right.
Mental health struggles, financial pressures, relationship breakdowns, social isolation. Sometimes it even involves this, warped sense of protection,
Yeah.
a belief that they're saving their family from some perceived threat.
Like Anthony's fixation on the apocalypse.
Right.
He twisted that fear into a justification for his actions.
Right.
But were there any warning signs? Any red flags that people missed?
Hindsight is always 20/20, but looking back, there were hints, right?
Yeah.
The financial troubles, Megan's supposed illness, and her increasingly, strange beliefs.
Yeah.
Even that chilling reference to fearing Robert in the suicide note.
Right. But even with those signs, no one could have predicted such a horrific outcome. It's just heartbreaking to think that those children might have been saved if someone had intervened.
And that's precisely why it's so crucial to be aware of the warning signs and to foster open communication within families and communities. If you see a loved one struggling, if their behavior changes drastically, if they start expressing extreme or unusual beliefs, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah.
There are resources available, and early intervention can make a world of difference.
So what can we as individuals do to prevent tragedies like this?
Well, awareness is the first step.
Okay.
We need to educate ourselves about the dynamics of family annihilation and create a culture where people feel comfortable seeking help without fear of judgment.
Right.
We also need to build strong support networks,
Yeah.
both within families and in our communities.
It makes sense, but it also feels like a systemic issue.
Right.
How can we as a society address the underlying causes,
Right.
like mental health struggles and financial stress
Yeah.
that often contribute to these tragedies?
You're right. It goes beyond individual responsibility. We need to advocate for better mental health resources, affordable and accessible health care, stronger social safety nets.
Mm.
We need to create a society where families feel supported, not stigmatized, when they're facing difficult times.
It's clear that the Tote family case has, far-reaching implications.
Right.
It forces us to confront uncomfortable realities about the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of, seemingly ordinary lives.
It's a wake-up call, right?
Yeah.
To pay attention, to be aware of the signs, to reach out to those who might be struggling in silence.
Mm.
And as we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question.
Okay.
What can we, as individuals and as a society, do to create a world where families feel supported, empowered, and safe from harm? It's a challenging question, but one that deserves our attention and our action.
Thank you for guiding us through this, difficult but important conversation.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to continue exploring the source materials we've provided. What insights did you glean from this deep dive? What questions are still lingering in your mind? The Tote family case is a tragedy that forces us to confront difficult truths about human nature and the fragility of life. We hope this conversation has sparked a desire to learn more, to be more aware, and to be a source of support for those in need. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.